three presentations, but our first speaker is in that next group as well. So we'll get started. Michael Boyce from Aptatek is going to give the first presentation.
Hello, everybody, and whoops, slides are changing in front of me. Give me 1 second. All right. Well, thank you very much to the organization for the opportunity to speak to you today and give you an update on our development of a Home Phe Monitor. So I think the way we're doing this is we'll do quick overviews of the development of the various technologies and then hopefully some Q&A. So our company Aptatek, we've been working on the concept of home monitoring for chronic disease. And of course, inborn errors of metabolism such as PKU are really important models for this kind of technology. I just want to emphasize a couple of the challenges of monitoring for PKU. Obviously, you know well that the metabolic issue is that your phenylalanine is going up when you have the various potential mutations associated with the PKU. And the challenge is really that phenylalanine is a very small molecule. The concentration relative to something such as glucose, where we know is routinely monitored by the patient, the concentration is very low. So you have a small molecule, very low concentration. So it's relatively hard today to measure other than in a central lab using mass spectrometry or HPLC or something relatively complicated. And you know this because if you do blood cards, you often mail them in or give them to your clinician to test, and you get results back sometimes maybe not even 5 or more days later. So it's not information you can use routinely in your day-to-day management of disease. So when we think about measuring phenylalanine, there's kind of two really broad categories, and I know my colleagues will talk more about this in their own technologies, but it's basically direct measurement of phenylalanine, such as HPLC, where you're actually measuring the amount in the blood, or indirect, where you're measuring using the detection of the phenylalanine to create a stronger signal through some kind of additional chemistry to allow you to determine either quantitatively or semi-quantitatively how much phenylalanine is there. And a whole number of strategies have been tried from the development of other diagnostic tests applied to PKU with varying success. And it's really good to see a number of companies now working in this space, because this is a really good model system from the technology perspective for other diseases, MSUD, et cetera, as well as other chronic diseases like chronic kidney disease and other areas of importance medically. So what we're focused on is using DNA aptamers. They have the advantage of binding to small molecules really well. So they basically act like antibodies, which are used very commonly. If you've been doing a lot of COVID tests at home over the last 2 years, those tests are primarily antibody-based. So they're using antibodies that target the different components of the COVID virus. And here we're doing that, but with aptamers that can target very small molecules like phenylalanine. So it allows us to create a specific binding event that we can use to quantify the phenylalanine. So this gives us a direct signal. The goal here is to make this quantitative, because as you know, in managing your PKU, you want to know not just is your phenylalanine high or low today, but really try and measure more accurately the level of blood Phe in real time, especially if you're taking many of the new and exciting therapeutics that are being developed now, where your blood Phe can be quite low. So you want to really be able to measure quantitatively. And using a technology like this, we can do direct comparison with in this case, a fluorescent signal to one-to-one correlation of the binding of the aptamer, the DNA aptamer, to the phenylalanine. So this gives us kind of I won't dwell too much on the chemistry, but it's a nice, well-established and robust chemistry. We've used it to detect various small molecules, including therapeutics, hormones, and things like this, in addition to the amino acids. So we incorporate this into a simple lateral flow device, which again, is something you've become familiar with, certainly with COVID testing. It's a very ubiquitous technology. The goal is to make it a low-cost platform, of course, to take advantage of the manufacturing technologies that are in place already. And we incorporate into that what you see in the cap on the right, kind of in the middle picture, is the chemistry required. So you're taking a small amount of blood, 5 microliters, mixing that into this buffer in the middle, and that creates the chemistry for detection on the lateral flow device. So the components of the system are here. That cartridge, which is where the chemistry occurs with the DNA aptamer and the phenylalanine in your blood. Lateral flow device for separating that out for detection. The reader, and we'll have the reader here tomorrow. I'm sorry it's not here today. A colleague will be joining me tomorrow, so we'll be able to show you that at the booth. And that reader connects directly to your phone. It's Bluetooth enabled, battery powered, so can sit on your countertop for the week, holds several thousand reads, directly connects uniquely to your phone. So it's your reader, your phone. If you're a parent with a couple of kids, with BKU, you can manage both of them separately on the same system. As an adult, of course, you can make sure that it's HIPAA compliant, so it's connected only to your phone for security of your information. And then the smartphone app allows you to evaluate your blood Phe over time, depending on whether you're in the US or Europe, whether you're doing different measures of concentration, and then showing that over time. As kind of shown on the right in the schematic, little circles that you see as changes in Phe over time with this example. And then you can also export that information to your clinician and share that information as well. So the kind of goal with that, and I'm just showing here the software running on the phone, and we can show you that tomorrow as well. It's guiding you through the process of testing, finger stick of blood, mixing that up, and then running the reader. So that's the whole system in those 3 components, designed to allow you to do this at home and as often as you want to do. Now, just looking at how accurate and reproducible we want to make this test, we benchmark it against HPLC and mass spectrometry, which are kind of the 2 gold standards, if you will, depending on where you routinely get your blood Phe measured. And the goal is to have linearity across kind of the clinical range. So down in the 50 micromolar up to, in this case, it's showing 1200 micromolar, a linear range. So this is a good system for patients depending on how they're managing their blood Phe and what their levels are at. One of the things is to make sure that we can use it in low concentration. So that's just shown here, which is really the idea of this is comparing to, again, HPLC or mass spec at the low concentrations in the 50 micromolar range to make sure that we can use this for patients who are being treated with therapies like Kuvan. One of the opportunities for this, and this has been alluded to in the management of PKU, is really, of course, diet, therapy, and monitoring, right? Understanding how those disease management approaches are affecting your blood Phe. So we think the reader can really act as an integration hub for managing your disease and coordinating that through a web portal so that the patient can really use that information both for managing different requirements they might have clinically with their primary care physician in terms of therapies, diet, et cetera. So just really quickly on the timeline, we were getting close before COVID, got slowed down a little bit with COVID, unfortunately. But the good news is from COVID, I will tell you that I've been working a lot over the last 2 years on home, excuse me, home COVID tests with the NIH and FDA. And the FDA is much more receptive to home monitoring devices in general for chronic diseases, particularly. So I think it's a really good opportunity now for moving these devices, not just from the research side, but directly into patients' home over the next year or two. So we are looking to get this in patients' hands in the fall and move to clinical studies early next year. And with that, I will say thank you very much for your time and look forward to questions.
I think we'll just do questions for everybody together at the end. So next we'll invite our colleagues up from Egoo.Health. So are both Shreya and Julie presenting simultaneously, or how's this working? Come on up.
Okay, got it. Hello, my name is Julie and this is Shreya. And we are from the Danish company called Egoo.Health. And we are also working on developing a home monitoring device for feet. And just to talk a little bit about what we do and who we are a Danish company and we were founded in Denmark in 2018. I'm not sure if anyone have heard about us, but in the virtual conference in 2020, our founder and CSO, Peter, was presenting. And by then we were around 20 employees. So we've really been expanding the last couple of years, and now we're working more than 60 people, spanning over different departments. And what we do is that we make this Egoo.Health platform, which is an integrated at-home biomarker diagnostics platform. And currently, during the pandemic, we CE marked, which means that we have approval to sell in Europe the analyzer, so the device, for a molecular rapid SARS-CoV-2 test. So that is out for sales in Europe. And now we're kind of back to what our company is really about. So we're of course working on the Phe test. And then we also have a test for CRP in the pipeline, which is an inflammation marker. And then we're also working on a dual test of having SARS-CoV-2 and influenza A and B in the same capsule. Yes, so our Egoo.Health concept is to have this platform. So the point is to have one Egoo that can then measure multiple biomarkers. So each capsule would contain the chemistry for a specific biomarker. And we like to use this analogy of having an espresso machine, and then you buy capsules with the flavor of your choosing. So our vision is that you have one Egoo, and then you can buy capsules of whatever biomarker that you want to measure. Yes, so to work a Phe test on our Egoo.Health system, you would require 4 components. So first off, you would need to collect your sample, and we have this device called the Egoo Collect Plasma, which is a little filtration unit that where you put full blood in, and then plasma is extracted, and we've actually applied for a patent for this device. Then we have the Phe capsule that contains the chemistry for the Phe test, so this is specific for the Phe test. Then you would need the Egoo analyzer, which is the device that can run the test. And then finally, you would need a smartphone app where your Phe value will be displayed. Yes, to begin with, if you want to run a test, you would first need to collect your sample. And as I said, you need to use this Egoo Collect Plasma. So this is what you can see in the picture. This is the latest edition. So first you would prick your finger with a finger stick, as I'm sure most of you have already tried when you do your dried blood spot test. Then you would apply your blood to this little capillary tube, so it will easily take up the blood. within the device, plasma will be extracted, and then on the opposite side, you will pull out this little 10 microliter of plasma that is compatible with the Phe capsule. Then you insert, break off, put it in the Egoo analyzer, and then within 30 minutes, you will get your results displayed on the app.
Yes. So the second component after the Egoo Collect plasma is our capsule. And this capsule contains the assay chemistry for the reagents. So it contains all the reagents. And of course, this capsule will depend on different tests. So it's specific for different tests that you would use. The assay principle that we use for our Phe test is an enzymatic fluorescence-based chemistry. And okay, I can't see the slides, but okay. And then we have done a lot of optimization in the last 2 years. So for example, in 2020, we actually needed about 5 hours to run this test on our platform. And now it actually only has a reaction time of about 30 minutes. Additionally, we have also introduced some freeze-dried reagents in our capsule, which means that we have some reagents in the form of beads. And this helps us a lot because it increases the shelf life of the capsule, so you can have a longer expiry date, but also that you can store the capsules at room temperature instead of having to store it in your freezer. So it actually gets rid of the entire cold chain. Then the third component is the Egoo analyzer. And this analyzer works such that you have one analyzer and then multiple different capsules that can be used on the same analyzer. And this is possible because the Egoo analyzer can actually use both different detection technologies, such as absorbance as well as fluorescence. So you can detect both molecular tests, such as our current COVID test, but also immunodiagnostics and chemical tests, such as the Phe test or the CRP test. Then the final component of our system is the clinical app. So this app can be easily downloaded on a smartphone, and it works such that it operates our Egoo analyzer, but you can also see your results at the end of the test on the app. And this test for the Phe test will be such that you get a precise value in the form of micromolar per liter, and that will be displayed on your smartphone, and it can be saved. So you can actually keep a track of your results at the end. So now that you've seen all the components separately, we would like to show you a small movie that kind of combines the entire system together so you get a better overview of it. Okay, the first component that you see there is the Egoo Collect plasma. So you actually just prick your finger and then you just apply some blood right there. And then you just close the cap, and then what happens is that plasma is extracted on the other side of the collection tube. And then you just take it out, put it in the capsule right there, break it off. And then that smartphone app is used to operate the Egoo. So you open the drawer of the Egoo right there. And then you just insert the capsule in. And then you scan the barcode on the capsule, and this tells the analyzer of which test it has to run. So it's going to be different for different tests. And then you close the drawer and the test runs. Of course, this is just a demo video, but in case for the Phe test, it will take about half an hour to run the test. And then it opens at the end and you get the result right there on the smartphone. So yeah, it's pretty easy to use, as you can see, and it's user-friendly. So anyone at home can actually use this and run the test at home. Then we have also been in a very active collaboration with our partners in the Netherlands, which is the University Medical Center in Groningen. So we have this collaboration where we test different clinical samples, where we tested both at their center, which uses this golden standard method to test for the Phe levels. And then we also test them on our analyzer in Denmark. And we also have this discussion with them of what should we use and how should we develop this test, what the patient needs, and so on. And so it's a very open discussions that we have. And then what you see here is this method comparison study where we tested 28 plasma samples ranging between 53 to 1,290 micromolar per liter. And as you can see in the graph there, we get a really good correlation between the two methods, both the golden standard method, but also on our method on the analyzer, showing that we are on the right track, and it is really good promising results for the whole range. So it's really promising.
Yeah, so finally, we just wanted to show you a very simple timeline of what we've been doing and what the future holds for us. So as Shreya mentioned, the last couple of years, we've been working on implementing these new features, such as assay reaction optimization, both on time and the actual chemistry, and then also the lyophilization. So our next step is to actually implement these new features, and this includes clinical trials and also a lot of documentation that is required. And this process is really long because it requires almost the entire company to work together, spanning from production to sales and marketing to quality assurance. But we're planning to submit for the European sales in 2023. And it is worth noting that as of May to this year, the European regulations got more tight, and they're actually very similar to the FDA regulations. So hopefully a lot of the studies and data that we have from the CE mark can be easily translated into matching the American regulations. Of course, we still need to make clinical trials here in the States. And that's also why we're here at this conference. We also really want to talk to you guys, and we're making this device for you. So of course we want inputs and feedback and what you think would be nice to have as features. So we also really encourage you to come and talk to us. We are hiding somewhere close to the kids zone, but yeah, we really want to talk to you. Yeah, thank you.
I assume though, if you put a Keurig capsule in, it won't make coffee. So our last presentation, Thomas Christiani from Vitro Diagnostic Solutions.
Let's see how this works. Okay, so I'll just keep moving forward. Thank you to the NPKUA for inviting me to talk. I'm really happy to be here. This is my first time being here. Just a little bit about myself. I got my bachelor's in chemical engineering from a local college in New Jersey. Then I pursued my PhD in biomedical engineering, and I really love the idea of biotechnology, you know, working with different engineers, biologists, chemists, just to try and solve solutions for people like you that have PKU, have disorders, have issues, trying to obtain medical devices. And so before I came to this conference, I really wanted to try and get an understanding of the whole field of PKU, who's working on what. So you can see in this diagram, we have huge players in terms of nutrition. So as PKU patients, most of you, all of you rely on medical nutrition. I, pretty much learned that that's a huge driving point in terms of trying to help you manage your disease. And then you have different oral injectable components. And gene therapy as well, which is pretty much new. Not many companies are working on that. And you could see these companies kind of overlap, right, in these different fields. And what is the biggest kind of thing that I've noticed is that there is no bridging between what we're working on as diagnostics and the other fields of nutrition injectables. And I think it's really important personally that we need to develop these collaborations and understand, okay, I'm taking Kuvan. How is that influencing my Phe levels? I'm ingesting different nutritional products. How is this dictating my Phe levels? So that's just kind of one driving point I wanted to mention. In Vitro Diagnostic Solutions was founded by my boss, Robert Harper, in 2017. We've raised $7 million in non-dilutive funding through the NIH and NSF. So we're really successful at grant writing. He's personally brought 10 products to market. He's awarded 8 patents, 16 SBIR grants. And we work on specifically developing novel point of care devices for rare metabolic disorders such as PKU. Other areas of assays that we work on include G6PD deficiency, jaundice. So we work on detecting bilirubin in neonates. We also work on detecting maple syrup urine disease, which was mentioned before, also hemoglobin. So we work on a lot of different assays, and we've been pretty successful so far. We're a very small startup company in New Jersey, but PKU is one of our major driving projects. So, there are a bunch of different testing and monitoring guidelines for phenylalanine. I've gotten a better idea from you all of what your needs are. And basically the driving point is it's pretty much useless right now, what you're doing. You're going to a clinic, you're going to a hospital, getting a reading once a month. That's not helping you manage your disease. So what we're working on up here is trying to get you an at-home device that you can measure daily if possible. So what our company offers is a similar diagnostic platform. It includes a disposable finger stick blood draw kit to obtain a blood sample. We have a handheld reflectance-based meter, a cell phone application that connects Bluetooth wirelessly, and we have test strips for the detection of Phe. It's highly accurate, very simple blood sample collection. It can be performed at home, and it's HIPAA compliant. So this is a simplified version of the testing workflow, but you'd basically turn on the app, you would insert the test strip into the meter, you'd perform your capillary blood draw, you'd apply the blood sample to the test strip, close the cover, wait for the analysis. So really unique key features of this assay is that it only requires 20 microliters of a blood sample. We can measure range from 1 to 25 milligrams per deciliter. The test time only takes 5 minutes. It's actually very rapid. And the shelf life right now I am working on. So stability of these test strips is actually very important for you to be able to test long-term over the course of a year. It's a very small portable system. I'll kind of talk about the test strip technology. This is where all the magic happens. So it's a vertical flow assay. And what you'll see is there's a stack of membranes inside each cassette. So membranes 1 and 2 filter out the red blood cells, and then the plasma travels vertically down and reacts with that third membrane. And what you'll see is that when it's unreacted, it remains yellow, the membrane. And when phenylalanine in the plasma reacts with this membrane, the chemistry occurs, and the test strip will turn a blue color. So the more blue the color of the test strip, the more phenylalanine you will have in your blood. This is some of the chemistry that's shown below. So we use a indicator. It's called water-soluble tetrazolium 5. And for those of you that know a little bit about chemistry, there's an oxidation reduction process, and the indicator goes from yellow to blue, and phenylalanine also becomes oxidized to phenylpyruvate. So we have also shown some really promising results in the first graph. You can see this curve or this dose-dependent response between 1 and 25 milligrams per deciliter. Again, the color goes from yellow to blue. What we've also studied is different levels of hematocrit. So if you're dehydrated on some days, maybe you have less plasma available, we need to ensure that different hematocrit levels don't influence the test results. And we've shown that we've eliminated hematocrit bias through the vertical flow. Tyrosine has also been kind of a major competitor in this assay with phenylalanine. So we've also eliminated interference from tyrosine. So it's a more accurate precision measurement of phenylalanine. So these are just some results that we've shown. There's other types of guidelines that we have to follow, like I mentioned before, in terms of stability testing that aren't shown, but we're working on that right now. This is a little bit about our manufacturing process. So we understand that we have to really scale up the process to meet the demands of all of you. So we have a machine in-house where we're able to coat the membranes. We then segment the membranes into cardstock. We just obtained a new ribbon slitter. So we cut the membranes into long strips. We hand assemble them right now. So it's kind of a semi-automated process. So we have a jig where we place all the cassettes down, lay down membranes, and then we press them with a pneumatic press. And then we singulate the cassettes into individual test strips. We then store them into vials that are desiccated. And again, the vials have labels where it contains all the information that you need, including a QR code where you scan it with your cell phone and proceed through the application. This is a little bit about our development timeline. So we're currently working on verification, validation studies at the end of this year and at the beginning of 2023. We are collaborating with Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh and Boston's Children's Hospital. So, we're looking to do preclinical studies with different children and adolescents at different levels to see how well our device performs. And then we're also trying to go for a CE registration in 2024. Our team would really like to thank you and the NPKUA for having us here and hosting us. I do want to say it was a pleasure meeting a good group of you, about 20 of you, who I was able to actually test my device out. And I actually got a lot of great feedback yesterday, seeing what didn't work with the device, inserting the cassette, understanding how to use capillary tubes, how to use lancets. So it's actually very, very helpful to understand that. Also, I do really want to mention, I know many of you have asked questions about insurance. Is this going to be covered? When are the devices available? I think the more information you give us through the PKU registry, the more it will help us understand what your needs are. For example, how many times do you guys think you will be able to test your blood per day? How often? Do you want to test every single day? Do you want to test 3 times, once per week? That's important for us to know, because then we need to know how many test strips do we need to manufacture for each individual, and how much will be covered. Meter costs as well. What's the lifetime of a meter? Battery life. Those are the things that we need to think about to help you. So I think we're really eager to help answer some questions, and feel free to ask whatever you guys want. Thank you.
Thanks. Do we have a couple of microphones that we can pass around for questions? We didn't set that up ahead of time. Got that? I can't see very well. Okay. There you go. Any questions for anybody? Well, while we're looking for questions, I do want to make a comment, actually, Thomas, about one thing you just said about, I think it's extremely important to get the families and patients' opinion about how often to test. But I think that's also something that we need to systematically study. Phenylalanine turnover is extremely slow compared to, say, glucose. So it's not like you can change your breakfast and see a change in your blood Phe immediately. So certainly checking like every hour is not going to do much for you. So knowing the frequency of how often to check and make changes is something that needs to be studied. And so for people on pegvaliase, for instance, we know it's very variable from one patient to the next, how long the drug actually lasts. The half-life is anywhere from like 16 to like 60 hours from one patient to the next. So I don't even make dose changes more than like once every 2 to 3 weeks with that drug, because it's just not going to even get to equilibrium in that period of time. So making lots of changes quickly, I'm totally in favor of getting lots of data, but how often to do that and make a change in treatment is less clear to me. So I think that's something we have to really study pretty carefully. Questions? These are blinding. Yeah. Hey.
Hi, my name is Linda Sywin and I'm from Florida. And first of all, I want to thank you guys for making the home testing kits for us. That's going to be real beneficial and actually giving us our blood spots earlier than what we usually get them. My question is how available will these be to like public insurance, and for people like me on Medicaid and other people who are on Medicare.
Do you want to tackle that one?
This one is maybe this one.
Testing.
Yes, to turn them up.
So the question is insurance coverage, right, of the home tests. It's difficult to say today. I mean, part of the goal of all the teams here is to make it accessible, start to answer the question of how often should a monitoring occur, because we truly don't know, right? I mean, you know, anecdotally as patients, how you feel. And we know from that interaction really that there's more going on physiologically than we can understand today because we can't test frequently. So there's a big gap in our knowledge right now around the importance of testing. So I think number one, it's to kind of get it out there with the patients, start to collect that data with clinicians, with the therapeutic companies that are here, as you said, kind of working with them to understand when those changes occur, because it's not just the therapy in a sense, it's all the other physiological things going on with the patients. So there's a big gap in understanding. I think patients know more in a sense than sometimes we appreciate. And when talking to patients, they certainly feel that more than once every 5 or 10 days is important, so they can use that information in their daily management. And that's kind of that idea of empowerment, right? Helping the patients work with their physicians. That said, insurance companies that I've talked to range from there's kind of 3 camps, I'll say. One is not a lot of interest, because it's almost like the advocacy with the Congress, right? They're sort of, what is this? And how do I have one patient with PKU in my whole program within a state? So there's not a lot of interest. To understanding that the health of the patients really impacts their bottom line, right? If patients, because comorbidities with chronic disease are a constant issue, right? Patients are not as healthy as they should be. They develop other diseases. So the cost to insurance companies for chronic disease is always higher than you might think, right? We always think of a disease as acute. We're going to treat you because you broke your arm, but chronic disease is a lifetime management issue, and the cost of it is lifetime. So so there are some insurance companies that understand and take a more proactive approach, and I think that's where we'll start. I think getting the therapeutic companies on board with providing monitoring to their patients is going to be a really important tool to gather that information, much as you said that we have to have that interaction. So the short answer is there's not a lot of support for reimbursement today that we've seen. On the Medicare side, less so, because that covers mostly elderly patients who have aged out and are not monitoring themselves. And so there too, I think there's not a lot of appreciation in that field. So there's no easy path right now other than educating the insurance companies, getting the therapeutic companies on board to get devices out so we can gather the information.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
That was very well put. I would also like to say, our company has also tried to talk to other insurance companies to obtain information, look at payee information, try to figure out, what are the costs, what are the insurance companies willing to cover. So it's kind of a murky field to kind of figure out. But we're just trying to continue that discussion and figure out estimates, So we're trying.
I would just come back to the studies in terms of we have to make the case that it's useful ultimately and prove that. Another question here.
Hi, my name's Kendall Temple. I do have PKU. I'll tell you my age. I'm not afraid. I'm 55. I'm currently been on Palynziq since 2014. My Phe levels went from 38. My last was 0.5. And so one of the things that I've noticed, is when I do feel off, is it high or low? And
Mhm.
that's the thing that I always want to know. And so my question is there a way to integrate your system with things like controlling diabetes? Because some of us do have either borderline diabetes or diabetes already, and you're already monitoring that with stick to maybe integrate your technology with Dexcom 6 or
Great question.
creating your own.
So that's a great question. Specifically for our assay, our test strip is designed to at least detect 3 different analytes, right? So in terms of diabetes, we could also add glucose to the panel to help you figure out, all right, are my glucose levels high or low? You know, after talking with Meredith yesterday, which she might be around, I don't know. Hi. Yeah, so she also brought up, you know, the idea, I don't know if it, you know, I'm feeling crappy because my Phe levels are low, maybe because she doesn't have a good intake of food. And she actually feels better around 4 to 7 milligrams per DL. But we also tried to understand her tyrosine levels as well, right? So the medications that you're taking may in fact, you know, impact tyrosine levels as well. So our goal is also to try and include tyrosine as well. So that's a great point that you bring up. You know, if patients on this type of diet are more likely to develop diabetes, maybe including a glucose measurement is helpful. But I definitely think tyrosine would be helpful as well. So maybe the espresso machine would probably also.
The espresso
I'll
machine.
segue to that. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. There you go.
You're gonna regret you ever used that for a.
This one doesn't.
It's the same. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's the same for our analyzer as well, that you have an espresso kind of machine with different capsules. And of course, right now in our pipeline, we have a bunch of different biomarkers, but because it can detect both molecular but immunodiagnostic assays, and we can actually go ahead and have these different kinds of assays. So you have multiple different capsules on the same analyzer, and then you can actually have the data on your smartphone, which can then go to your dietitian or to your doctor and so on. So that would help you.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think all of us want to see menus basically on the systems, because I think that's a really powerful offering really into generally, again, kind of enabling patients to help understand their disease and manage it and give the feedback to their clinicians around how they do feel, you know, based on all of those factors. There are additional challenges there. Just to go back to insurance really quickly around menus, because traditionally reimbursement's even worse if you say, I want to do diabetes and PKU and something else. So I think we're all going to move towards getting those menus.
We know
available.
we could get the diabetes covered though. So if you could get that going, right, we could get
Right.
insurance to pay for that.
It's
And
really
then, and then the
true,
fee.
just
would
sort of
just
sneak
come along.
PKU in.
Well, it's noon and I know it's lunchtime. So unless there's other burning questions,
I
looks
have a-
like Jerry might have a announcement, but thank our panels for giving their presentations. All very promising. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, by the way, and it's exciting. I'll just say that my first conference was 2014, and this was a concept. And so to see, you know, the diagrams and the prototypes it's really awesome. So a bit of housekeeping here. Somebody's going to flash up another text to give. That's just going to continue to happen. So I don't know if that's going to come up. They're moving. They're getting there. A couple things. If you want to see your kids again, they're back at the kids zone. They shut that down for the next hour, so you can pick up your kids now, drop them off again when you're sick of them at 1, and then at 1:15 we'll be back here for the next presentation. Thank you. Oh, and lastly, I believe all of our panelists here have booths out here, and so please go visit the booths to learn more.